Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast on this Thursday night, the 30th of January. Tanner, you're going to have to help me. This is episode 178. Tanner is producing in the big room today. I'm going to be introducing shortly a guest and a friend of mine. But before I do that, I want to preface this for you, my very appreciated viewing and listening audience. When I do the Professor Penn podcast, and it's just us together as a community, and I'm talking about what's going on in the world, our podcasts are growing every single podcast. We got more and more people, and that's because you're posting, reposting the links in your socials. You're telling people, I appreciate that. It's the only way we're going to grow on YouTube because, of course, YouTube thinks I'm a conspiracy theorist. So your efforts is what grow the show. I'm bringing on guests that are politicians, political people, elected representatives, like Dan Schultz, like Maureen Bannon, like the guest I'm going to introduce shortly. And I noticed that when we do this, the engagement drops. And I want to say right up front, please stay with this show. Because the point of this, although I want, and I say it all the time, I want to be funny, want to be entertaining, want to keep people engaged, I'm doing it to win. What is winning? Winning is maintaining the republic, maintaining the freedom, and increasing the health and well-being of every citizen in this country, or where I live here in Minnesota. We're coming to you from Free People Radio Studios in Minneapolis. It's the belly of the beast, communism in the upper Midwest. I believe that we need to care and minister to every citizen in this country. We are shot through in the Republican Party with what people call rhinos. And all I hear is complaining, lots of complaining. Rhino this and rhino that. Complaining is not going to get anything done. Complaining is entertainment. It's a psychological process. I want to be entertaining, but why I'm doing it is to get your interest in saving your life, to encouraging you to get involved in the political process, to join the Republican Party, to become a delegate or a precinct committee man, to actually engage in politics, because our framers, the people that created this great country, gave us the gift of self-governance. That's what republicanism is. It is, I am a sovereign of my own life. And they said, hey, you'll keep it as long as you can, because they knew people get lazy. And we're at a moment now that Donald Trump is in the chair, and we got 4 years. It's a 4-year stay of sentence. And if we don't continue to win and to grow our constituency and our presence in our halls of legislation, if we don't continue to work in the state house, the outhouse, the judges, the dog catchers, if we don't pursue republicanism, tyranny is going to come back with a vengeance. So I want to remind everyone, the key here is to get involved, like the guest I'm soon to introduce, to come off the bench, get in the game because you love God, you love your country, you love your family, you love your freedom. Something is going to motivate you. And I'm going to ask my guest what motivated him. He's got a story. Going to hear it shortly. But we're doing this to do something together as a community. We can become an awesome community. Join and follow me at Prof. Penn Podcast on X. Let us get a digital army. And thanks to Rob and to Scott and to Susan and all the people that I see contributing to the growth of this community. It's fantastic. Every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Time at Dan Schultz 2. That's on X Spaces. Go to X. Set up an account if you don't have one, because that's the battle space. Find Dan Schultz 2, at 8 p.m. Central Time. And every Friday night, Dan and I will be there with one goal. We're not talking about issues. It's what, how, and why you want to be involved in the Republican Party of your state. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce an elected representative here in Minnesota, serving in the Minnesota State House, the House of Representatives, a representative from 48B.
58B.
58B. Sorry. This is my friend, Drew Roach, from the Farmington area. That's about an hour south of where we're sitting. Drew, welcome to the Professor Penn Podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's been listening to you for a while, and we've been in the trenches in State Central before, and you're a warrior. I appreciate you having me.
Well, you're a warrior. Now, I have to, just because we have to do this, I don't really know that much about I mean, are you married? Got kids? Were you born in Minnesota?
Yeah,
What are you doing? Are you a farmer? I don't know.
sure.
So just take a minute just
Yeah,
for me. And please, now the audience, hang in here because we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of one of the most fractious political fights in the country going on at the state level here in Minnesota. It's very interesting. It's brutal. And Drew's going to give us a firsthand report. It's really great. But I wanted to start out with something personal. So a little bit about Drew, please.
sure. So I'll touch on that real quick. Regular dude, blue collar guy, right? I got 3 kids, fiance, small business owner. So I'm a owner operator of a carpet cleaning business. Been doing that for about 8 years now. So, when I was campaigning, I told everybody I sweat by day and I campaign by night.
I got a question for you. Do you have mobile vans to go do this?
I got one van. It's me.
You got to buy your tires from tireget.com.
You know,
There you go. We're going to
I'll
get the
do that.
plug in up front.
I'll do that.
Right. We're going to give you
Got it.
the Free People Radio special treatment.
Love it.
That's great. So you're a blue collar guy, which means you're a guy that has worked.
Absolutely.
You have 3 kids. You got a fiance, which means, like many of us, you've tasted the lash of the family court.
Well, no, actually, I haven't.
You haven't.
No, I've the mother of my daughter, she just kind of abandoned her daughter. So I've always had her, and she's always had custody of her, and she's been in my custody for the 11 years of her life. So
So you enjoy being a dad.
absolutely,
I
that's why.
love being a dad. I have 5 kids biologically, and I have a stepson right now, and he's 15 years old. And Mrs. Professor Penn looked at me last week and she goes, "You like him more than me?" I said, "No, baby, that's not really the way it is. But it's so cool to be around kids when they emerge."
It's awesome. Yeah, we've got 3 kids, so blended family. We got a boy and 2 girls, and our oldest is a boy. And I've spent many seasons coaching him up in football. I'm always on the sideline at basketball. Tell him to cut to the lane. Don't be weak. Quit standing out there. Steph Curry's ruined basketball because he wants to stand outside the 3-point line. Every kid wants to shoot a half court shot now. So the competitor in me loves watching basketball and football and soccer and all the activities that my kids are in. It's part of the biggest joy, one of the biggest joys of being a father. So
So what motivated you with really young kids? What motivated you to give up your personal time? Because that's what it is. I mean, I've risked everything I have to do this. And people go, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I got a ton of money." No, no. I've given everything I have to set up this forum that we're in right now, Free People Radio. What put you over the line, man? What would, because I want the people in the audience to relate to it.
yeah, well, tyranny, tyranny. In 2020, I saw the executive branch of the state of Minnesota and Tampon Tim, Tyrant Tim Walz, try to put his thumb down on the Minnesota citizens and business owners and tell them that they weren't essential. Told people like me that's just trying to raise a family that I shouldn't be working. He used government agencies to come into businesses, arrest citizens, hijack their business license, throw them in jail, use the attorney general to prosecute them. That's what motivated me.
So I want to say this back, make sure I got it. During the COVID era in Minnesota, the Democrat governance here deemed many businesses non essential and shut you down.
Absolutely. And I fought that tooth and nail. I'm not going to let a tyrant tell me I can't provide for my family. And I wasn't going to put up with it. So I got involved, like you suggested earlier. I started showing up to my BPOU. I became a delegate.
Okay, wait, slow down. For the people that are outstate in Minnesota, our basic unit of organization is called a BPOU, a basic political operating unit. These are generally associated in Minnesota with districts that are called Senate districts, but there's county BPOUs, and you're in a Senate district BPOU, correct?
Correct.
And that's Senate District 58.
Correct.
And you're on the A, A,
B side.
B side. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So what cities are in that B side?
Quite a bit. So there's a lot of them. So I'm not going to name them all because I name them all, might miss one. But my district goes as north as Coates,
Okay,
as east as Ravenna,
okay,
which is the Wisconsin border, south Hastings,
okay.
to as south as Northfield Township, and then as far west as Farmington. So
Wow.
it encompasses all that in between there.
And just to let everybody know what politics is all about, what Drew is saying is he got motivated because he was tyrannically constrained from taking care of his family, and he wasn't willing to put up with that. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, interestingly, because I'm in the tire business, I am an essential business. So what drove me over the edge is that electioneering down in Georgia. And I just said, man, I sat there. I'm pretty good at math. I sat there with all those counties and looking at all the polling trends. And I said, surely President Trump's going to win Georgia. And when he lost, my head blew off my shoulders. And I said, man, I can't just sit back anymore. So we went in the same year. That was 2020 for me too,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well, and then that snowballed in to the election in 2020, right? Because I saw everything that happened. I'm quote unquote an election denier, whatever that means.
I had Randy Sutter in CD3. He's retiring. He was the head of CD3. And was doing a thing, I don't know if you ever heard of it. I was doing a thing up here called the Master Classes. And for those of you who are going to say it was Masonic, no, it's musical. We have these master classes in the music world. And I thought, I'll put on these master classes and I will increase the number of Republicans in my district. And I went to CD3 leadership. And I said, I want to do this in association with CD3 because I was on a board. And he said, fine, just make me a commitment that you'll never talk about election issues. So that's where we were at that time. I could not. I mean, I said, okay, I'll do it. I agreed to it. And I said, fine. And now we do talk about election issues, which is not a bad segue into talking about. And for those of you outstate, I want you to hear what it's like here in Minnesota, because the exact same thing is going on in your state. You just haven't figured it out yet. Talk a little bit. Drew is in the Minnesota House of Representatives. He's new. He's a freshman, right? It's freshman term.
Right.
So he's learning, and he parachuted in to a firefight. I mean, just like the most acrimonious fight that I've ever seen in our house. And I've never seen anything like it. There was a woman in the Senate. Well, I'm going to let you. I'm going to preface it. There was a woman in the Senate that got caught. Allegedly, she's under indictment for burglarizing a house. Democrat. She's still serving in the Senate. And it's tied, I think, right? Or are they up by one?
It's tied.
It's tied. The Senate is tied.
Well, yes. I think they just had an election the other day.
Right. They filled that in. They tied that. That was that 90-10 thing over by the university. And in the House, I'm going to let you talk about the House because that's where you sit. You got to get your mind wrapped around this story could be a movie. Please proceed.
Yeah. So fast forward. I said 2020 is when I got involved. Fast forward to 2025, and I'm seeing the exact same thing go down. Tyranny. Flat out tyranny. We came into this election, and we within the House, and Minnesota was in the House. We didn't have control, the Republicans, in years past, right? Democrats ran roughshod.
It was all Democrat.
They had trifecta control. They had the House, they had the Senate, they had the governor. Going into this election, we, on election night, had flipped the House, right? We had won a seat, and we got the majority. Funny. One of our members had won. Aaron Paul was deemed the winner in 54A. In the middle of the night, he was deemed the loser. They miraculously found ballots. And when they reposted the numbers, he went from being up by 300 votes and declared the winner to losing by 13 votes. Interesting. Then they went ahead and did a recount, right? Upon that recount, they found that there was 21 missing ballots. Thrown in the trash. Gone forever. And then he ended up being up by 14 votes. So upon the recount, he collected a vote, but they realized that they lost 21 ballots. That was argued in court. And, the judiciary in Minnesota, which we can expand on, which is also overreaching its power, more tyranny. See the kind of theme we got going on today?
The theme of tyranny, if we the people don't get involved in politics.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We got some elections coming up with Supreme Court judges, and we need to pay attention.
Well, we're gonna have a whole segment on the judiciary because right now we're all focused on the elected officials. In the meantime, as you found out in Minnesota, there's a lot of juice in the third branch of government.
Yeah. So, as I was saying, they recounted it. This got argued in court. The courts deemed that special election isn't needed. That Brad Tapke had won that race, fair and square. Don't worry about the 21 ballots. Yeah. Oops.
Nothing to see here.
Oops. Sorry. It didn't matter. Those were Tapke votes anyways. We don't know that. We don't know that at all. That's never been proven.
Now, has this been appealed to the Supreme Court?
No, it has not been appealed to the Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, the time frame on that has expired. So Aaron Paul cannot appeal to the Supreme Court. What he has now is he has the ability for the House of Representatives, my body that I sit on, to defend his right and to unseat Brad Tapke and to make sure that we have a special election in 54A. Democrats have sat here and controlled the narrative on their race, saying that the voters of 54A are being disenfranchised because Republicans are going to unseat Brad Tapke. The reality is the only voters in 54A that have been disenfranchised are the 21 voters whose ballots were thrown away. That's disenfranchising.
Now, how many votes were cast about in this district?
You'd have to, maybe our producer could pull that up.
You know what? What was that district, please?
54A.
Tanner, see how many, if you can, in the last election, how many votes were cast in 54A, Minnesota?
So we call a special election. The gaslighting of the left is just absurd. And the right needs to we need to fight. We can't let them continue to gaslight and astroturf and manipulate the narrative in the court of public opinion by not talking about it. When you go to court and only one side shows up, they win by default. So to sit here and say that we're losing in the court of public opinion on the Brad Tapke race is because we're not talking about it. Why aren't we talking about
We're talking about it right now.
I get it. Why aren't we talking about the 21 missing ballots? 21 disenfranchised votes. Don't forget 21, right?
Did you get a number on that? Or are you still looking? Hang on, let me get my calculator cooking here. So we had 10,000 for the Republican. We had 10,000. And how much for the? Okay, so we're in a district with 21,944 votes. 21 votes disappeared, which is 0.1%. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is why, I talk to Dan Schultz sometimes, come to that X Spaces on Friday night. This is why people like Dan who've been working on this for a long time, 15, 20 years, there's a certain amount of fatigue because we got people that don't even vote, let alone join the Republican Party. We have 21 votes, and the implications of this is instead of the Republicans having control of the House, you'll be in a power sharing agreement. Do I understand correctly?
Potentially, because there's some more juice to this, right?
Okay. Okay.
So, anyways, is where we were at with Brad Tapke. But so if we unseat Brad Tapke,
Let's
let me
call him the Democrat. The,
sure
the
the
Democrat.
Democrat. If we
Because the
unseat the
people in
Democrat,
Tennessee don't care about his
sure,
name.
sure. If we unseat the Democrat and we have a special election, it doesn't disenfranchise anybody. Gives them a unique opportunity to be able to vote twice. Who gets to say they get to vote twice?
It's a do-over.
It's a do-over.
Okay.
Now, with that said, as of right now, going into election night, we were tied, or we had the win. Then they deemed Tapke the winner.
The Democrat.
So thank you, the Democrat. So we went into a 67-67 tie. However, upon further review, there was another race. It's the 40B race, the Roseville race, which the Democrats lied and cheated in that one as well. In which case they propped up a candidate who won, very heavy seated Democrat district, and he won, only to come to find out that he was lying about where he lived.
He was a carpetbagger, so
He
to
was a
speak.
carpetbagger. It's pretty common for the state. We got a lot of carpetbaggers.
Yeah.
We won't touch base on some of them, but
Well, we'll just touch base on this Democrat.
on this specific one. So, that Democrat that got adjudicated, got argued in court, and the courts overwhelmingly, I mean, the evidence was overwhelming that that seat, he did not have the right to be seated and be given us an election certificate because he was lying about where he lived. I mean, there was like 200 and some um, pieces of evidence brought to court to prove that he was lying about where he lived. So now we're back to a 66, 67, and Republicans have the majority. We have the upper
Right
hand.
now, today.
Right now, today. We have
Even
the
with the
majority.
seating of that Democrat with the 21 missing ballots. So
Even,
you're up. You're up. You're in the up position.
yeah.
Okay.
So we have the majority.
Wait, the plot's about to thicken. Listen to this. Please continue, sir.
So we have control. So being that we have control, Republicans went forward with business. The night before the first day of session, when we were supposed to be sworn in, the Democrats held a secret swearing in ceremony where they got sworn in outside of the Capitol into some museum.
I think it was the Science Museum of St. Paul, if I remember correctly.
Something.
Maybe something like that.
With a retired judge, where they were recognized as elected officials.
The duly elected representatives in the state of Minnesota, right?
So, yeah.
Sounds so august and so righteous, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Please continue.
So we show up, Republicans. We show up the first day of session as we're expected to. We do our swearing in, and the tyrant of state, the executive branch, getting back full circle 5 years later. Exactly why I got into the politics, because we had a.
This would be Steve Simon.
I'm getting there. Yeah, Steve Simon. That's why
Okay.
I said the tyrant of state, Steve Simon, Secretary of State, quote unquote. He is the presiding officer over the House until we elect a speaker. So, as Republicans, we showed up to do our duty, be sworn in, and to elect our speaker. Upon doing that, we weren't recognized as a body. Steve Simon has, again, had authority based on the Constitution to preside over the body until we elected a speaker. We went through and did that. He did not recognize us from the floor. The senior member of the body, Representative Paul Anderson, took to the rostrum, and we went ahead and proceeded and elected a speaker with 67 votes, which has been done twice before in the state of Minnesota. So there was precedent there to hire or to elect a chair with 67 votes, which we did. Fast forward, Democrats pushed back. They took us to court in the Supreme Court, which again is a Supreme Court in Minnesota that has been appointed by judges that have been appointed by Walz and Dayton. So they're left leaning
That's
judges.
kind of you.
Yeah.
Very kind of you to call
Yeah.
them left
Yeah.
leaning. That's very
Left-leaning.
kind. Very
Yeah.
kind.
Yeah.
Very kind.
So they ruled that we didn't have quorum. So they suggested that 68 votes is what's needed to have quorum. We needed 68 members. Or we needed 68 members to be able to go forward with a speaker. So everything that we did the first 2 weeks on the House floor is null and void. And as it stands today, we continue to go on the House floor and are not recognized by Steve Simon, tyrant of the state, as a body.
I think Trump would probably call him Sneaky Steve Simon.
Sneaky Steve, whatever you want to call him. I like tyrant of the state.
Yes,
I think
you
it's got a good rhyme to it, right? And I might get some pushback for that, but the reality is that's how I see it. Now, when I say I fast forward to 2025, I see the executive branch, which again, as I touched base on earlier, they in 2020, Tim Walz used the executive branch and entities of the state to go into businesses, arrest them, put them in jail, take away their business license. And now in 2025, we have entities of the executive state and Steve Simon that's not following the Constitution. He's not recognizing our motion to get the state patrol to bring in these members, respectfully, of the Democrats to come into the House floor so we can have quorum.
I don't think you brought this out. We should elucidate a little bit. The Democrat chose not to show up.
Excuse me. You're right. So they have not shown up. You're right.
I mean, you got to get this. If you're out there in another state, I want you to get your mind wrapped around this. The House has a session, it has a schedule by date. One of the things that the Democrat has done to undermine this process is instead of them showing up, they've sent emotionally and potentially physically threatening activists into your chambers to harass you. Is that not a true statement?
Correct. Yeah. There's members of a group called the Aliveness Project that get $2 million funding from the state and $2 million funding from the federal government.
Oh, President Trump cut that off,
There's
I bet.
$2 million that they can cut. So Doge, if you're paying attention, it's $2 million savings right there, Aliveness Project.
$2 million.
$2 million.
Hey, I bet you all of us could retire on that.
Yeah, cut that funding. So you're right. I got a little ahead of myself. So the Democrats now are protesting or striking, and they're not showing up because they say that we are starting a coup, right? And that we are not organized correctly and refuse to show up. And it's because they are afraid that we will not seat the Democrat out of 54A. So they're using the guys that
This is the Democrat that the 21 missing ballots.
21 missing ballots.
And if you actually had a quorum and you were in session, you might, because it's within your constitutional powers as a body to say, we're not seating this guy.
Yeah. So the courts ruled that we didn't have quorum, but the reality is as a body, as you suggested, we have the authority to control our own members, right? And to dictate the members of the body. So we have the overruling authority on whether or not we accept the election certificate of the Democrat in 54A.
Okay, I have to call for a sidebar. Gotta have to break here now. Because people are listening to this and we're getting into some, I mean, it's not really that technical, but for your average citizen, this is quite technical. Now, let me tell you how this game works, all you American citizens that follow Free People Radio. Your elected officials depend on you not paying attention. They depend on you not knowing how your government works. They depend on you not knowing how anything goes down. They depend on you believing lies, and they lie every time they talk. Not Drew, but many of the people that Drew has to interact with, they lie. When their mouths are moving, they're lying, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. Now, this is difficult. I've been really full-time politics now for 4 full years, as have you. There's a huge sacrifice that is made here. And then people go, well, I mean, I hear the excuses. I know the excuses. I got better things to do. I want to take care of my family. Don't want to end up divorced. I don't want to hang around with crappy people. There's nothing I can do about it. There is a retinue of, because we both come from the streets, both of us. We know what our own excuses were, right?
Yep.
I mean, you're
100%.
better than me, man. You're younger than me. I've been making excuses since 1977. So, I mean, I got a whole lifetime of excuses compared to your age. And we do this, and the reason we do it is the default is it's always going to work out. It's always going to work out. And here's the dirty truth. It's only going to work out this time if we have Drew's back or whoever, wherever you are. There is some drama like this playing out in your state right now. I don't care what state you're in. If you actually get into it, you're going to find out in all these state houses, all these elections, all these budgets, this BS is going on everywhere. This crew of tyrants, they're not just going to give up. They're going to put mega hats on and say they're done with the program and wait for us to give up. And when we give up, they're going to come back, and I'm going to assure you when they come back, they ain't going to come back friendly like we are. We're still American citizens. We believe in respecting the rights of minorities. We believe in our Constitution. These people want to change our Constitution, and quite obviously from this story, they have no interest in following it when it suits them. True statement?
Correct. Yeah. They change the rules of engagement as they go because they control a lot of the levers, right?
The legal levers.
Illegal levers, right? So now we've got in Minnesota, we've got the executive branch that's in on it, the real coup. We've got the judicial branch and the Supreme Court that gave a unprecedented ruling, which again, they have no jurisdiction over the legislative body. So they really shouldn't have
It's
any.
advertising.
Yeah,
It's advertising.
separation of powers. They shouldn't get to dictate what we do in the legislative body. But they've ran roughshod. So now we've had the executive branch and Secretary Steve Simon try to control what the legislative body does. And we have the judiciary branch. What is the point of having the legislative branch if we're being controlled by two other branches of government and having our hands tied to not let us do what we are elected to do and represent the people? They are disenfranchising the voters of 67 districts in the state, actually 133 right now, because the other Democrats aren't showing up and their constituents, their voices are not being heard either. So they have been able to shut down and completely control the narrative and not allow Minnesotans to have their voice be heard.
Well, let me just ask you, because now we've set the stage, and I want everybody to stay with me, and I want everybody to come to that X Spaces on Friday night. This is so complex at one level. I know people are tuning out. It's always fun. I'm playing the music and all the clips, and I can be very charismatic. You've seen the thing, and I can hold a crowd. It's cool. It's cool. But this is where the rubber hits the road in the trench, man. This guy is in the trench. He's knife fighting with people that are bending the rules, breaking the rules. And here's what's going on here in Minnesota. The belly of the beast, communism in the upper Midwest. But it's not that different in your state. It just looks different. Like, let me give you an example. Oklahoma. Drew, every county in Oklahoma was red in the last election cycle. Every single county. Sounds like a red state, doesn't it? Yet they elect Senator James Langford to our U.S. Senate, who sponsored the border bill that President Trump derailed. And they all said he derailed it because he wanted it for a political issue. I read the bill. See, that's another thing. Are you all reading these bills? Because you can figure out, and for self-governance, we need to figure out how to go find this stuff and read. I read the bill, and here's what that bill did. That bill memorialized as legal the illegal entry of almost 4 million people a year. And that was supposed to be a good bill, the best immigration bill in history. See, so they lie, they hide, and that was a Republican that sponsored that bill. That is not a Republican. He's a Republican in name only. He caucuses with the Republicans, But his policy is post-World War. See, when I say that other one, Google puts up a warning on the podcast that I'm talking about conspiracy theory. He is a supporter of the Democrat liberal order. And that order stands on world governance. And, we're just got it too good here in Minnesota. We just got to have lots of immigrants, right? We got to spread the wealth, so to speak. So we have these allegedly Republicans. If you live in Oklahoma and you're watching this and you're, chest thumping because every county went red, hey, look what you're generating. Same thing in Texas. Man, I'm very tight in Texas. I got quite a business interest in Texas. They generate a dude down there named Senator John Cornyn. This man is the rhino's rhino. Texas is seen as a Republican state, yet they generate people for our Congress that will vote, if nobody's looking, with the Democrat. Every state has this problem. So how do we sort this out? Well, we got to continue and talk about there's business that's not getting done because we're really dealing with monkey business now, right? And it all boils down to, number one, a Democrat elected member who didn't live in his district, which is illegal, which means the Democrats were willing to run Ken Martin, the leader of the Minnesota Democrat Party, who's running to lead the national DNC. He was fine with that kind of cheating. Or he's stupid because he didn't check the guy's place of residence. So if he was a competent leader, he would have demanded a report. Where do you live, partner? That'd be the first question I ask if I was in charge, right? Isn't that a reasonable question?
Absolutely.
So either he's incompetent or he has got no problem with it. We call this around the professor. We used to say people were either stupid or evil, but because I'm getting a little bit politically correct, I now say they're either ill-intended or incompetent. Choose it. It's either ill-intended or the rules were broken. So that guy, there's a problem. We got another senator. She is alleged, because she's not convicted, and you are innocent until proven guilty under our adversarial system. She has been indicted for the burglary of a home. That's a problem, correct?
Yep.
And now you have the Democrat liberal missing 21 votes in a judicial system that backed up a play, and then a Secretary of State that bent the rules and disempowered the body. And here we sit, instead of us doing the people's business, we're doing monkey business. Would that be an accurate summary?
That is correct. And the Democrats in the House have been able to hijack the process, right? And now they're sitting out, not showing up to work, gaslighting constituents, lying through their teeth, waiting for Republicans to cave on a power sharing agreement. And I'm sitting here banging my fist on the table saying, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Hey, when you're in a closed door session, do you really bang your fist on the table?
There's no table, but I'm yelling.
Best
believe.
I mean, I got a reputation around the Republican Party as being kind of a wild guy. And, I'm really not. I'm really get along with everybody. I never found a Republican, except for one I don't like. My bottom line is, you don't have to agree with me. Just don't lie to me. We're shot through with liars, too. I mean, that's another thing, you're getting a good dose of that now because this is a civilian that decided he was going to become a participant. And I know that that's a learning curve, right? You're incredibly articulate. And, when a guy sits there and says, I'm a blue collar, I'm in a really work with your hands kind of business, and you come with this kind of articulate dialogue and insight, I want to say something to all the PhDs that I grew up with. You can bleep this out, Tanner. F you people. Your judgments against the citizens of this country are so noxious and they're so inappropriate. I'm so happy that, this is the first time we really had a chance to talk.
Yeah.
I mean, we've known each other for a long time, but actually sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Man,
we're battle buddies.
We're battle buddies. Right. We haven't had time to talk.
We've been in the trenches. There's no talking when
there's
you're
no
in
talking. That's right.
No talking in warfare. But we've been on the same side. We've been fighting some of the same battles, and we're up against the state party and but yeah, well, it's fighting for all the right things, right? I got to stand on my principles and my values.
And I just want to say for everybody that's listening, the depth of this corruption. We're also focused on the election of our House members, our Senate members at the state level. Quite frankly, most of you don't have any idea who's elected in your local district. I'm going to just say as a homework, tonight, when the show's over, or you take your phone right now, you can go to your Secretary of State website, put in your address. There'll be a location finder. Put in your address, your district will come up, your elected representatives will come up, where you're supposed to go to vote will come up, who your water commissioner is will come up. You need to know who your local players are. We're not even paying. Everybody's so focused on Washington, D.C., And yes, we're super happy President Trump is the president. It's great. What is he doing? He's returning power to the states. Our government is set up to be 50 states. The federal government is supposed to be oh so small.
Yeah.
It's grown into the void that we, the people, left because we didn't show up where? At our local political party. We have created the gap tyrants have filled. Is that a reasonable statement?
Absolutely. And the grassroots is growing exponentially in this state, as we've seen. With elections like myself, right? I'm a regular dude, right? Blue collar guy. I consider myself the most grassroots candidate that the state of Minnesota has ever seen.
Now let me tell you why Drew has a feeling for me. Because when he was running, I actually came down to one of his events, which was like an hour drive for me.
Yeah.
You remember that, right?
Sure did.
I had 3 pieces of pizza. I took something. I took a benefit.
Yeah, there you go.
But he had a beautiful venue out in the middle of really farm country.
Yep.
And the place was filled. And he put an event on. I came down. And why do you do that? Well, for me, I am somebody here in Minnesota. People know who I am. But I wanted to support him because I knew he was a good dude. And we will go anywhere, any place, anytime to support the people, or you can come here. Hey, if you want to run or you're elected and you're in Minnesota, this is a national forum, but the national forum, we're not supposed to have all of our attention on Washington. That is a magician's trick. The magician's trick is, let's leave it to the Senate, the House, and the president. No, you have the people's business. All of these agendas that are tyrannical, right?
Yep.
Real, true tyrannical agendas, like including depopulation to that level, they find their expression where? In our state laws, correct?
Yep.
So anything that you, as a Tennessean or a Floridian, and I've been watching some of the stuff in Florida that's going on, not because I want to comment that I'm not watching it that close, but every place you are, you're going to recognize that the elected officials can actually not follow through and protect the rights and freedoms of the citizens. And the action is right here in your state capital. So I'm going to ask, since we had a preamble about all this tomfoolery, because it really is, because the result is going to be, and before I start asking this question, I'm going to tell you, why is the result this way? In your state, there's probably a university system, not probably, there's a university system. It's funded by the federal government. Everybody that's teaching your kids there is a communist. Not everybody, that's a broad generalization. But when you start getting up to 95%, close enough. I don't want to do the cognitive distortion thing because someone's going to put in the chat, I know a great conservative Christian at so-and-so university. And the guy's under siege or the woman's under siege. You go to these universities, they're communist finishing schools. That means like here we've got a paper called the Minneapolis Star Tribune. Drew said that they can gaslight the people. That's because the paper, all the reporters, the editors, the editorial staff, they're all communists. They call themselves Democrats. That's nice. That's branding. They're communists. The judicial system, where do those judges come from? They're lawyers. They graduated from law schools. Those law schools are communist. No wonder the people are getting gaslighted and you're losing these fights in the courts. That's not a surprise. You talked about that one fight you won where the guy didn't live in his district. When you got 200 pieces of evidence that the guy's lying, hey, if they could have got away with it, they would have ruled the other way. It was just too embarrassing, right?
Yeah, probably, but there was just way too much
Overwhelming.
overwhelming,
Right.
right? Absolutely overwhelming.
So this is going on in every state. Every state's got this. Every state's got this. So my question is, and I want you to opine on this, once this tomfoolery is over, because it's going to have an end. And, if you had asked me, and I'm not going to ask you to get in the weeds on this, but when this thing started, I knew what the end point was going to be. Okay, so for me, when I get a letter from the Minnesota Republican Party asking for my money on this fight, I'm saying, come on, guys. This is not the fight that really matters. Looks good for the constituents, because we're a little bit tired because the party always rolls over or doesn't support the real American first candidates like Royce White, where we get Michelle Benson and, Paul Gazelka, former Senate Majority Leader, and Rudy Boschwitz and Norm Coleman and Kendall Qualls, one of our favorite, uh, purveyors of the status quo. They all come out and they say, oh, no, unity, 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 until we get Royce White as the endorsed candidate, and they all go the other direction. See, so this, there's things that kind of piss me off. Okay, but leaving that to the side, just taking an opportunity for a kidney shot. There are really important issues. And I'm watching some of the issues you're getting attached to. And I want you to tell the audience when this tomfoolery comes to an end. And there will be a very close split in that body, right? With the Democrat governor.
Yep.
What are the real issues facing me as a Minnesota citizen, in your opinion?
Well, we've got a lot of issues. I mean, the Democrats have had trifecta control. So whether it be, funding our education, elections, right? The overspending and overtaxation, public safety, right? Many of issues. We got the personal family medical leave, which is going to affect every city in the state. It's going to affect school districts, businesses, all these mandates that have been put down on the taxpayers of Minnesota. We can't afford it, right? So we need to get to a pre-COVID fiscally responsible budget. That's first off and foremost. We got to stop the bleeding, right? 2024 is not going to be a year of mass policy change. It's not, because they have the Senate. Right now, we've got the House. We need to maintain the House. We need to stay strong as a unified front within the Republican Party and unseat Tapke so we keep majority, so we can hold the line and have our Braveheart moment in 2026. That's the reality of it. You got to be transparent with people. It's not all butterflies and rainbows.
In other words, when I went to all the parties after the election and all these people walked up to me and bragged that they'd broken the Democrat trifecta, you're not really going to get down on me for looking at them and say, only if the caucus holds together.
It's true.
I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot.
It's the
truth.
truth.
I mean, I'm not in the caucus and I'm no longer sitting on a BPOU. So I'm going to tell you, those of you who are going to listen, and Drew has nothing to do with this. This is me freelancing. I watch everything you people do. I read everything. You guys break, and play with the Democrat. Oh, we're going to call your ass out. That's what we're going to. No, this is he's a team player. I'd like to play on the team too, but not if you're a communist hiding in the Republican Party. For example, I'm not going to mention a name because you're here. I'll be kind about it. You're either down with the president's program or you're not. Like all you people that were for Nikki Haley or you were for, see, I'm not going to mention names because you're here. You listen to the podcast, I mention the names all the time. But, you don't want trouble. I don't want to bring trouble on you. You're really for Mike Pence, Nikki Haley. You really don't really want to see the immigration policy carried out here in the state. You're really backing up the sheriff because they're not working with ICE. You're okay with illegal immigrants in our state, killing our citizens and raping our kids. You're okay with that because, you want to get elected. And you kind of, when you run for your race as a Republican, you don't even say you're a Republican. You won't stand on the stage with other Republicans that are full-throated America firsters. You won't even support President Trump when you knock on doors. Those people I'm going to hold those people accountable. You're going to work with them. I hope you can. I hope when they realize that there's new media in this state and new energy in this state, as you said, the grassroots movement is growing. I don't want to see any of these people unseated. I don't want to primary them. I want to hold them accountable that they have more concern about the Republicans in their district than they do about the Democrats they're catering to. Is that a reasonable comment?
I totally agree. Listen, I didn't get into the race, and it's a lot of work. I made a lot of sacrifices. I took away money out of my pocket working. I mean, I took over almost a month and a half, 2 months off, knocking doors every single day in a district that I knew I was going to win. There was no doubt about it. But I wanted to earn it. But if that means that I'm a one-term rep, that's fine. I will not back off my principles and my convictions and the things I believe in, so that way I can get reelected. It's bullshit. It's exactly why we keep riding the damn merry-go-round. We need to stop with that mentality. You're either down for the cause or you're down for yourself. That's part of the problem, right? We got to be about pushing conservative values, and if that means potentially dying on your sword and maybe losing your seat, man, it is what it is.
And I'm not going to mention all the people who I've interacted with who've said things like, well, we have to have one message in this area and a different message in that area. No, we have one message, and here's the message. We're about freedom. You know, I'm not here to, I don't mean this critically. I'm just going to offer this up as I don't even know if it's right. You know, but why I'm offering it up is we've been doing the same thing over and over and losing progressively.
The merry-go-round.
We're losing. I mean, we've been, you know, we rode the coattails of President Trump this time.
Yeah.
A once in 100-year candidate.
And we won't have that in 26, right? We do not have that in 26. What we have in 26
is the citizens.
Is correct, is the citizens, but it's about doing the will of them now. Because Donald Trump won in 2024, despite all the election issues we have in this state and across the country, because he identified low propensity voters. Those voters that, believe it or not, 4, 5, 10, 6 years ago, they were Democrat voters. And he found a way to tap into them, to reach out to them and to get them to come out years later to continue to support his cause. We need those voters to be motivated and excited to come out in 2026, because we don't have Donald Trump to carry us in 2026. All we have is what we do now, today. And if Republicans roll over and we forget about election integrity and we don't do the right thing for those low propensity voters, the new base of the Republican Party, you can kiss 26 goodbye.
And there's a strategy, and here is the strategy. So for all the people that are listening in the Republican Party, it'll either work or it won't. It's not up to me. It's up to the citizens of Minnesota. Oh, God's will. We're not even going there. But yes, because God can touch anyone's heart at any time, which I think is a great comment. I just don't want to invoke the Most High God on something I can ask you to do as a human being, because this is logic. We don't need a miracle for this. We need the logic of what Drew said. Minnesota citizens, Oklahoma citizens, Missourians, I don't care where you live. There's a political party in your backyard. It is shot through with self-interested politicians who have been elected, shot through with purveyors of the New World Order, the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. They believe in a worldwide endless war. They're okay with the country being in debt. They're okay with it. They're okay with giving up our freedoms, like what Drew went through when the tyrant Tim shut down his business. They're okay with. There's plenty of politicians that back that up. Okay, now.
Just one correction.
Please.
He tried to. I did not let him. I worked. You can tell me I can't work, but I worked.
Well, you worked at the risk of your freedom.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's
But
next level.
You're 100% right.
That's next level stuff, okay? But There's a strategy here, and it's a very easy, eloquent strategy. You have these people in every state legislature. And let me say again, the federal government is not the answer to our problems. It's your local governance. Our Constitution demands local governance. The fact that all this action is going on in Washington is a perversion of what the framers wanted for our citizens. There's a party. That party has what's called an endorsing convention. The reason the rhinos that you complain about in your backyard continue to get elected is because you don't show up. Because the party apparatus is full of careerists, what the Russians would call apparatchiks. They're professional party participants, and they participate for a social life. Maybe they grift off a little money. It's not even big money to steal. It's their self-image. They're officers of the party. Means something to them. Maybe they never accomplished anything else in their lives, but they're not down with the cause. They're down with what they're told to do. And because these parties have histories that go back decades, the top of these state parties and of the National Republican National Committee is globalist. They are not Donald Trump supporters. They're wearing MAGA hats today. They got big MAGA Donald Trump smiles, but they don't really support this. And they're waiting. And what you're saying is absolutely true. We'll lose. We'll go backwards in 2026 and 2028 if we, the people, don't go into this party. You come to that Spaces on Friday night, and Dan Schultz and the crew will talk with you about how to get involved. You go into your party, you become a metaphorical, no violence, metaphorical. I can't think of a better way to say it. A rhino slayer. We've got to remove these rhinos from the process, and there's only one way to do it. Become a delegate to your endorsing convention. Figure out who the rhino is. They won't be hard to find. That's the person you're going to think is an asshole, because they are. The other guy will be Drew Roach. He will have a blue-collar business. He'll own a couple of trucks. Maybe he's cleaning windows or working on, interiors like you're doing, or maybe he owns a small tire business like Professor Penn. And he's going to show up and he's going to say one thing: I'm doing this to maintain freedom.
Yeah, we've been manipulated to believe that you need to have some perfect, beautiful resume. That you got to have a political science degree. That you've got to be a buttoned up suit and collar, suit and tie guy, white collar. That's not the case.
I think you're going to be famous after this podcast. I really do. When the people see that a man came out of the streets, got elected, and can speak this eloquently and understand the issues like this, this is a bombshell. I mean, we don't get to talk to people like you because, of course, I'm not going to mention any names. They don't talk to people like me because, I'm pond scum, the mud people kind of, right?
I'm a regular guy. There's a radio host that uses a term, lousiest of the best and the best of the lousiest. I'm not special. If I can get involved and I can do it, and I became a delegate and finally decided to be a candidate and run, so can you. The only thing that's stopping you is you. We don't get anywhere in America with the decal on the trucks and the We the People t-shirts and the flags hanging on the back of the pickup. That does not win us freedom.
Did everybody hear that? Dan Schultz listens to these. Dan, you might not know of Dan. Dan started the precinct strategy. When Dan heard you say that, Dan is sitting at home right now going, wow, that's what we need to get through to the people. All the posting on X is just psychological. It doesn't move the needle. We can't even get all the people to vote, but the real action for a political action community like this is do like Drew says, become a party officer. Get involved. We'll help you do it. We'll talk. We'll demystify it. That's another thing too. The process when you went in, did anybody mentor you or help you?
No.
Yeah, figure it out on your own.
Yeah, we figured it out on our own. I got a power couple, right? My fiance, she's a badass too, and we went in full force. And she's worked on campaigns. We knew what we were getting into. I mean, we just went in full steam and started learning. right?
How long did it take you to figure out the party?
Well, be going to state central, meetings and going to state conventions. You see how it works, right? When you go to make a motion, a legit motion, and there's a second, and they don't want to hear you, and they pretend like they can't hear you, right? You start realizing, and when it's a sitting senator that's presiding over the body,
Oh, I remember that meeting. We were there together.
yeah, presiding over the body doesn't hear the motion. You start realizing right away that it's the ruling class protecting the ruling class, and you know
Were you
the
at the meeting when a former state senator tried to throw me out?
what year was that?
Uh,
Oh, I believe so.
yeah,
Yes.
this is a great story. I, okay, so State Central. This is the demystification of the secret society. The political parties try to operate like they're secret societies. That's why Dan is hosting this every Friday night X Spaces meeting at Dan Schultz number 2, Dan Schultz 2, because it's not that complicated. They make it complicated so they can maintain control of it. And guess what? They don't want you to do this because if you come in, they're going to lose control of the process. So they do everything to keep you out. So I was at a state central meeting. This is the governing body of the Minnesota Republican Party. We're so kind of like the stockholders of the party, to use a business reference. We have a vote and how the party proceeds. And I really wasn't being, I really was not being obstreperous. In fact, I had COVID. I was saying nothing. And something went down. I called division. And they were looking for me because they're looking for me. And the guy that was leading the deal, I want to mention his name, but out of respect for you again.
Well, as he's not sitting, go ahead.
No, I'm going to let it
Okay.
go. See, he's a nobody. We just let him be a
Sure,
nobody.
fair enough.
He looked at me and said, "Do I have to throw you out?" And I screamed right back at him, "No, but you and everybody on that stage needs to resign because of the way they were treating the body. They were being tyrannical. Our own party." I was so a guy came over to remove me, and I gave him the death look. If you touch me, one of us is going to die. And he went away, and he brought 4 people with him to remove me. They're going to physically remove me. And I looked at all 4 of them like, if you touch me, you're going to die. And that was not metaphorical. That was for real. And they all ran away. And I thought, man, I'm an old man, but I still got it. And I find out later that Royce White was up in the balcony and he saw me getting in a tight spot and he came running down. And when they saw that 280 pounds of thunder running at him, they all thought they had something better to do. So I got to stay in the meeting and vote for the rest of the meeting. It was great. And
I remember that. That was in the auditorium.
It was in the auditorium. And when you're asking why I don't mention his name, it's not that I wouldn't. He's such a clown, I can't remember his name.
It's fine.
I mean, really.
Yeah, no, I
mean,
get it.
it's just like
no need for
the
it.
has-beens, the never wases, the wannabes.
Yeah.
That's not going to change this country. When people like Drew Roach, and you can just put your name in that spot right now, when people like you, I could name 100 people that follow this podcast every time, that you guys could go into your local party and change the world. Here's another way to change it. Let's form an X army. Drew and I have connected on X. We're going to start reposting each other's stuff. All the people that are going to follow Drew are going to find the Professor Penn podcast. I had Walter Hudson on a few weeks ago. Now we're connected. This is how we build a digital army aimed at one thing: getting people into the Republican Party. We're not going to change the whole country digitally like this, but we can get all the activists aggregated and talk to all of them through Free People Radio, through the podcast, and we can get them motivated. We can get them to the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Caucus 2026. It's not that long away.
No, and they need to know that their voice will be heard, but you got to show up, right? You can't let the watered down voice override yours. And if you don't show up, there's only so many seats at the table. Anybody can take the seat, but if you don't come, Someone else is going to sit there.
And who are those people that show up when the citizens don't, when the Drew Roaches of the world don't roll in and play? Who's there?
The moderate.
That's
right?
That's kind of you.
The moderate sits there, right? The watered down individual that blows with the wind sits there and takes the spot, right? We need to have men and women that have convictions, that have principles, that don't give a about getting reelected, right? To get up, get involved, that are willing to hold their state representatives, their state senators accountable, right? When I ran and I campaigned, I put my personal cell phone number and my home address on all my campaign signs. Got nothing to hide. I want to be the most transparent, accessible candidate ever.
Because you represent your neighbors.
I'm not afraid to let people know where I'm at, right? I met them where they were at, knocked on their doors, had conversations. I didn't say, hey, what do you want from me? And try to hear from them. I flat out let them know who I was. When I got involved, as you were saying with the caucus, I made thousands of phone calls, thousands, knocked on hundreds of doors pre-caucus, motivating, connecting, building relationships with individuals in my community to express to them what a caucus was and how they can get involved and why it's important.
Whoa. Hold the phone. Stop for a second. Are you saying, did I understand this correctly, that before caucus in 2024, you made thousands of calls urging people to go to caucus? Is that?
Thousands.
Well, Dan Schultz is going to be, you're going to be on his wall of fame, not the wall of shame. The wall of shame is filled with people that grift and that BS and that opine, and they're not even in the party. See, now, if we had, in Minnesota, for example, if we had 50 people like Drew, this state would change in one election cycle.
Absolutely.
50. And if you're willing to be one of those people, you come Friday night to the X Spaces, 8 p.m. Central Time. You find me at support@tireget.com. We're going to aggregate these people. I'm just looking for the Spartans, man. We just want the 300. If we get the 300, that's all. Got to start somewhere. Because you know how it's been for me now that we hooked up? You know what it felt like to me? 2 men in a truck. That's what it felt like. Sure.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why the left is so powerful is because they've got a small entity, right, within the body. And I'm talking about in state politics now. They've got a small group that controls the entire body of the left. They have what they call the queer caucus. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying if you're an adult and whatever you want to do, you're a man, you want to be a woman, by all means, have at it. The most beautiful gift we have on earth is free will. You want to be a freak show? Be a freak show. I don't really care. You have that right to be. What I don't like is when that gets put into my kids' education and my school system.
Weaponized and politicized.
So to sit here and say that conservatives or Republicans, are are transphobic, no, that's not it. We just don't want you trying to teach our kids that my daughter can be a boy and my son can be a girl. That's nonsense. That's lunacy, right? As an adult, if you want to live that life, by all means, more power to you. But we have an entity, a group in the state legislature, which is a small minority of people that have strong convictions and principles, and they've identified themselves as the queer caucus.
Is that Lee Finke, the leader of that?
Lee Finke, and they are. He has created
he's not going to like that.
I don't care.
Okay.
You can live a lie. I'm not living that lie for you.
Okay. Get down, Drew.
And that body has registered with the state. They've identified themselves as the queer caucus. And because they have trifecta control, they have been able to leverage their ideas, their ideologies, their convictions, and manipulate the entire state legislature. And that's why we have the extremism that we have in Minnesota politics. And then they like to gaslight and call out the mega base, the alt-right or the far right in Minnesota politics. And again, make us seem like we're the extremist party. We are not. There's only one area of Minnesota politics that's extreme, and it's that queer caucus. So one of the things that I went about telling people when I went out and knocked on doors is, you know about the queer caucus? Do you realize that there is a far left extremist ideology in Minnesota that is controlling the entire body of the state legislature? So the power of that small minority, we have the ability to have the power of a small minority too. We just need to be strong.
Do we have a corresponding counterweight to the? Is there another caucus that's formed on the other side of the equation?
We don't.
I think that's a good strategy. There's an idea. I also wanted to say, because we're closing in on the end of the podcast, and again, I'm not saying I'm right. I just know that everything the Republicans have done since Eric Paulson trashed Donald Trump in 2016 has gone the wrong direction. And yes, we got a lift from Donald Trump on this last cycle, but as you've so aptly laid out, if we don't get the citizens in the game, hard to hold these games without a Donald Trump on the ticket. I think that's very honest of you. Really appreciate just an opinion. It's your opinion. You're not a fortune teller, but in business, for those of you who follow and know that I own TireGet and that I've been involved in business my entire life, I've been self-governing since I'm 17, 18 years old. You got to plan for the worst. When you own a business, if you don't plan for the worst, you hope for the best. Always loved it to be the best. Great. Let easy times come. But there's swimming and surfing. Sometimes you're up, it surfs up. It's great. Most of the time, you're swimming. You got to plan for the darkness. And what we tend not to do, we tend not to look at how bad it can get. And, we have this thing where Americans are always working out. It's going to work out if you get involved in your local political party. That is planning for the worst. But I do want to say in terms of messaging, and I don't know if this is right, wrong, or indifferent, but I think it should be tried. The Democrat always talks about money. In fact, when the Democrat gets elected, they give out money. They give a tangible money benefit. Marx said everything is about the money. He was a materialist. And I heard you say something about God. We just went by it, but I want to come back to it. We don't do a very good job explaining to the Minnesota citizens or the citizens of this country what this country is all about. And I think that if people picked up that opportunity, I'm not saying money doesn't matter. I mean, I know it matters. But there's things that matter more than money because you don't take that money with you when you die. What matters most is our freedom, which is granted to us by a creator in our founding document. I wish, at least we could experiment with it politically. Who gets on the other side of freedom? You just said it very beautifully yourself. If somebody wants to dress up as the other gender, we protect your minority rights. Have at it. We're all good with it. We are about freedom. Let us learn how to speak eloquently to our fellow citizens. Let's overcome this. We're biased. We're not biased. We're okay with however people want to live their lives. We don't want you to kill people. There's rules. There's limits. But people have broad discretion in how they want to be American citizens. Could we speak to that? Could we, when we're talking about how we're going to cut the budget and we're going to, stem the bleed, could we add in because when we're in debt, we're slaved? Because debt enslaves us, and that's the strategy of the Democrat, to make us dependent on the government. If you're taken and if you're given, you're also a slave. You see how this thing works, my audience? I know you get it. When you spend like this and you give to everybody, and everybody's on the payroll, almost everybody on the payroll, they're dependent on government. And then the people that they have to get the money from, if they don't pay, they go to jail. This is not a good system. This is a slavery system. So could we talk to our fellow citizens about the benefits of freedom and how we're being enslaved? Does that make any sense? Am I hitting in Am I going down an avenue that you understand? Am I making myself understandable?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, give me a little bit more.
We always talk about money. When we stand up at the microphone, our leadership, they're always talking about money. No, talk about freedom and human well being. We don't want to be arguing with the Democrat about what the tax rate is. We'll fight them quietly, knife fight them, give them every, metaphorically fight them to the last penny. But when I stand up in front of an audience, I don't want to sound like a Democrat. That's all they talk about is money. Money, 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 money. Give me money. My name is Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy. Gimme, gimme, gimme. That's who they are. Okay? We are the people. We are the party of human well being, of human freedom. I want to see my leadership start to inspire our fellow citizens to follow this ancient tradition that goes back 5,700 years, 5,700 years tradition. That's what it is to be a Republican. We've got to restore the brand.
Yeah.
When I see these Republicans that don't run with the R by their names, they're not helping me. They're not. They're ashamed to be Republicans. Yet when you go to the convention and you question that, 19 of these moderates stand up and say, he can't get elected in this district if he runs as a Republican. What did you say? Hey, if you're a one-termer, stick with your convictions. Did I not just hear you say that?
Absolutely.
How do you feel about the Republicans along this line? Well, I don't want to. I mean, I know how you feel. You already said it. I'm going to give you a pass. But I'm going to say it. Please, we have to restore the Republican brand. If you're in the Republican caucus and you're listening to Drew and you have to put up with me, because I know you don't like listening to me, it's a business. The brand is tarnished. Everything we do has to be aimed at restoring our brand with the customer, which is the citizens. Like Drew, put his name and telephone number on all of his signs, completely transparent. He let the people know he was there to serve them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so we were going over these issues. I know you've picked up the carry issue. I watched that.
Yep.
2A issue.
Yep.
You're talking about the taxation issue. We're overtaxed, right?
Yep.
Okay. What about the energy issue?
Yeah. Well, the energy issue is going to be a massive concern. Again, with the Democrat control that in the House and well in the trifecta control, they put forth an energy plan. This essentially the Minnesota's idea of the Green New Deal, that is we're going to require us to have sustainable energy by 2040.
Which is in 15 years.
Yeah. Well, that we
100%.
we have extreme climate in Minnesota, both in the summer and the winter. A renewable, sustainable energy is not necessarily the best way to go in Minnesota. And you put all these regulations and mandates on the people and our grid. We've got data centers that are going to be built.
Oh, I'm glad you brought it up.
We got
Please
data
continue.
centers. We got data centers, and I'm not necessarily anti-data center. I think there's when you get into AI, there are some scary aspects of it, but there's some things that can really benefit mankind. And I don't disagree that it's a fine line. Not anti-data center, but our grid is already
Maxed.
it's already maxed. And now we have, specifically in Minnesota, we have this new gold rush, which is data centers being proposed all across the state in these really, really small communities that don't have a large tax base. They're targeting these specific areas. They're going to require tons and tons of energy.
As
And-
much energy as the state is already using.
Yeah. And because we have this 2040 initiative to be carbon free by 2040, the input into our grid is not going to be able to keep up with the output.
And of course, for those that are wondering, how could this happen? These same companies like Google or Amazon, they have their own sustainability mandates internally because they've been down with the DEI and the climate change. They're part of the post-World War II Democrat liberal orders, a nice way to say it, that our world's going to be destroyed by man and we have to get off fossil fuels and we have to redress the wrongs of colonialism with the DEI initiative. That's what these companies are. In fact, they're They're the vanguard of those ideas. So when our Democrat trifecta put in place an all sustainable energy strategy, that met their goals, and we've attracted the potential construction of 8 data centers here in Minnesota,
Yeah. And it's
right?
and exactly. And this sustainable energy thing's a hoodwink because they're gonna be forced to, let's say we just go down that path, we don't fix our energy crisis. They're just gonna be buying outside energy that's gonna have some of it will be solar and wind, but they'll have to buy energy from another state that's carbon driven, right? And it's a hoodwink. Oh, well, we're carbon free, but you're buying energy that has to be brought from outside of this state, which is taken away from jobs to meet the demand and to help the output of the grid. So as a party and as a state, we need to look at the moratorium on nuclear energy and go forward with a plan to be able to supplement and really repeal this 2040 initiative because it's completely
This is a very interesting,
ridiculous.
I've led you here because when this vote comes up, and it will, because what you're saying is we have to change the composition of our energy mix to meet the demand that's coming down the road. Or guess what? In 2040, if I make it that long, I'm going to be in my 80s. When the power goes off, when it was 19 below this past week, hey, we ain't going to like that. The old people aren't going to like that. But when you put that up for a vote, you've got a Green Caucus led by Patty Acomb, who's in 45B, right where I live. The Republican Party of Minnesota couldn't even field a candidate to run against her. People say, well, why don't I run? Okay, you know why I don't run? Because I have other things I'm doing. Don't depend everything on Mr. Penn. The party needs to take down these folks, and I'll tell you why nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to take this issue on because they think it's a losing issue. But President Trump took it on. All you have to do is go to whitehouse.gov and click on executive orders and read what he's done. Because what he's said is it's the Green New Scam. Now, is that going to play well around Minnesota? Probably not.
Well, it will play when
When we're freezing to death.
when we keep going down this path and we've got rolling brownouts because the people that are going to maintain the energy are the big stakeholders, right? Those data centers because they come into these communities, they have an overwhelming relationship with the energy supplier, right? Their usage and that relationship is going to supersede, no pun intended, the little guys relationship. I'm just a petty little customer of energy, right? And so when it comes down to it,
When push comes to
when
shove,
push comes to shove, they're not going to shut off the power of the data center. They're going to shut off the power and control my thermostat and control my energy consumption and have rolling brownouts. And that's realistic. We may get to a point where they say, you're going to need to have a backup generator on all the homes. You think people are going to be able to afford to put, a backup generator on their home so they can stay warm in the winter or stay cool in the summer? Not everybody can afford that. We're maxed out as it is. People are struggling. Now I'm hopeful that and optimistic that that's going to change here in the next couple of years. I believe in of the policies of Donald Trump, and I think that is going to, as we saw in his first cycle of being president, Americans were doing very well, and I believe we're going to have some of that come back.
but Drew, I'm gonna have to yank on this a little bit
Sure,
because here's the issue for me as a political activist, and I do plan to reenter the party. Of course, they'll probably rig the rules so I can't get back in. That'll really piss me off. So you people that are listening in my backyard, you mess with these rules and make it hard for me to get back in. Oh, that's a fight you don't want to pick. But that's a sidebar. Anyhow, there's going to be some votes coming up on this. Some votes. And the Democrat, they have their queer caucus. They got their energy caucus too. Pretty strong. They think the world's coming to an end because of man-made climate change. So they believe that. It's a very strong held belief. Kind of like I believe in God. It's at that level. I believe God gave man dominion over all things. They believe man is destroying everything. It's kind of it's a big bid and ask right there. That's a big gap. And this vote's going to come up because these data centers are coming. And that caucus is going to vote against these alternative forms of energy because they are religiously opposed to them. And I'm wondering about these people that really don't stay strongly convicted. And they're in what they call purple districts. How are they going to vote? You know, you only break the Democrat trifecta if everybody hangs together. That's a big issue.
I totally agree.
And so we got a very important issue, like staying warm when it's 19 below. If you're listening to me in Minnesota, I don't think this has really filtered out to we the people how serious this issue is. This is not a kidding around issue. This too is an issue that can really affect your life. I'm not going to be like the Democrat and say it's an issue of life and death, because you know what? We have to self-govern. And when Drew says you can't afford a generator, I'm sorry. I get it. But we're going to have to figure out how to get generators.
Well, absolutely. But I'm just saying that's going to be an undue burden on taxpayers.
It certainly is an undue burden.
And obviously you'll have to, but we should never get to that point, right? We should be able to solve this problem. But I do know, if I'm not mistaken, I saw a report yesterday, it was the day before, that the Senate has voted down on that moratorium in Minnesota. So they shot it down in a committee. So
what was the exact amendment?
I'm not exactly sure what Senate file that was, but they did vote down the nuclear moratorium in the Senate.
They did vote it down.
Yep.
And has it come up in the House yet? No, because the House is not working.
Yeah, we're technically.
And what happens if this bill passes both Senate and House and goes to tyrant Tim Walz? What does he do?
I think he's going to take that red pen that says veto and put veto on it.
Because he's catering to the far left, queer caucus, which probably there's some overlap with the environmental caucus, isn't there?
Probably.
The wrecking ball of the post-World War II Democrat liberal are the people that are here to make sure that faith and republicanism die a very cold death in the depths of winter. Those people, they'll stay warm in their homes. I'll freeze in mine. I don't like this. This reminds me of we're going to privatize the profits and socialize the losses. That's who these folks are. The loss, hey, we're all going to lose together. The profits, hey, they just go to the few people at the top. We don't even know their names. Of course, I know their names, but I read everything. Drew, we're running up on the end of the time here. We got about 3 minutes left. In closing statement, is there anything you want to share that we didn't cover?
Well, I think we covered quite a bit, but to circle back, freedom isn't free. It's got to be earned every single day.
I thought you were good. It's almost like Tanner, when he says freedom isn't free, we should just cut off the show. What a summary statement. That's just great. So for everyone, I want to know how much I appreciate Drew coming on. It does take him some courage to do it, because when this hits the air, there's going to be people in the caucus that walk up to him and say, don't do that again. I think he's going to tell him to go bite a hog in the ass, because I know we had fun.
Yep.
You can go tell them I'm very reasonable if they quit lying.
Yep.
I have one requirement. Tell the truth. We don't have to agree.
Yep.
Quit lying.
Yep.
Don't lie. Stop lying. You lie, you're going to get a rash of it from me.
Yep.
Okay?
100%.
Now, we have this beautiful audience. We like to go out with some music. So, this was, I think, a pretty upbeat thing. Thank you so much for coming. You're always welcome here. Mi casa, su casa. But we're going to go out. Some people have been asking me in the audience to play some Stevie Ray Vaughan. I hope you like Stevie Ray, because it'll be on the end of the show tonight. Tanner, take us on out. Thank you very much for producing. We look forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me, man. It was a great combo. And like I said, freedom ain't free. Go earn it.
Thank you.
him standing next to me, jumping down the line. Think of all the things he makes of eyes. We're gonna raise some side. 'Cause I'm a fool child. God knows I'm a fool child. I didn't need to wake on your time. Give it back to you each and every day. I didn't need to take up all your sweet time. Give it back to you each and every day. If I don't see you in this world, see the next one. Don't be late, don't be late, 'cause I'm a fool child. God knows I'm a fool child. Wow.